I just got three things to say. God bless our troops, God bless America, and gentlemen, start your engine!
Welcome to the Stire Sound podcast with your hosts, Trey, Stire, and Jack Noel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 12 of the Stire Sound. Charlotte SMX is in the books. We only got to set through half of the racing. Strange day with all of the weather and all of the circumstances going on. But we move on. St. Louis coming up this weekend, a very supercross style hybrid track. I am Trey Stire, your host. Thank you for listening once again. We're going to jump right into it. Joining me as always, my co-host from the Dirt Bike Depot WMR KTM team. Fresh off his team's first playoff appearance, not only did they get the call to compete, but they qualified in their first motos. Gage Linville, 19th in the 250 class. Jack Noel, I'm sure you're pretty stoked on the weekend. A great building block for a brand new playoff team, a brand new playoff rider. Something to build on, something to take away with some positives heading into St. Louis.
Yeah, just to be there and to be present for, like the playoffs, right? Like everybody looks at it as a goal to set to kind of get into, right? If you're, a newer team or whatever. I mean, it's cool that we have something like this to be able to, like a postseason, I guess, that we can be a part of. That was like our goal going into this year, like I said last episode. And, the goal with this weekend was to get into the motos. And then obviously with St. Louis being double points and Vegas being triple, like knowing we can make the motos, getting more comfortable on the tracks, I think it'll only be better in the weekends coming. And obviously with some guys not being able to race, that opens up more opportunities, unfortunately, but kind of fortunately for us. So no, it was a good weekend overall. I mean, it kind of sucked we didn't have a second moto. I think Gage would have been a little bit more comfortable, I think, but overall I can't really complain with 19th. I think that's kind of about where I expected us to land first weekend coming into Charlotte.
We'll go ahead and get into the race recap. Obviously, our race recap going to be a little bit shorter thanks to the canceled second motos. Starting with the 250 class, you looked like a genius early on because Seth Hammaker was on cruise control out front, gets the whole shot, takes the early lead. Joe Shimoda made some quick moves, got up to second, and was really applying the pressure, but he went for an inside pass on an area that there really wasn't a bunch of passing on, clipped a tough block, went down pretty hard, lost probably 10 positions or so in the crash. And with Austin Forkner in second, Forkner had a great race going, but he was just kind of riding his own pace. He wasn't really pushing a ton. It didn't seem like he was riding around very comfortably, not pushing the issue too much, and it started to hold some people up who were really trying to send it and trying to go for it. There was a part during the moto where there were probably 5-6 guys behind him, guys like Davies, Deegan, Vial, Kitchen. They were all kind of nose to tail. I thought of it like the Eli Tomac bunching incident in Vegas 2017, just because there was a train of riders right there together. And we're about halfway through the moto. Seth Hammaker had a 12-second lead. I was thinking, man, he's got this under wraps. Everything is good to go. Then Deegan makes the move for second, finally gets around Forkner. And within like 2 laps of him making the move, it's down to 7 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Never mind. Deegan's winning this. What's new? And sure enough, I think 2 laps to go. He passes Seth Hammaker finally, sprints away from him. Hayden Deegan wins again, takes the victory in Charlotte. Seth Hammaker holds second place. Levi Kitchen crossed the finish line in third, but he and Hammaker were docked points, and Kitchen was docked a position for jumping on the red cross flag. Kitchen also got the spot penalty for passing someone under the red cross flag. Joe Shimoda charged from 12th to 4th, but he was promoted to 3rd thanks to Levi's penalty. Forkner, after his strong start, 5th place is a great sign for Austin. Then a little bit further through the top 10, Ryder D, Tom Vial. You had Cole Davies in 8th, his teammate Nate Thrasher 9th, and the fastest qualifier of the afternoon, a guy who qualified through the LCQ as well, Ty Masterpool rounding out the top 10. Just as it looked like we were going to have a new face winning, I say that even though Hammaker does have multiple main event wins in Supercross this season. He had some good runs in outdoors, but some ups and downs, and it looked like he was ready to get back into position to potentially challenge for the playoff win. But all of a sudden, here comes Deegan, and it seems like Danger Boy is unstoppable once he has that pace and once he has some breathing room to really charge and to hold his lines together. Jack, I'm sure you were paying attention to Gage and seeing how his race was going, but I'm sure you also got to see that 12-second comeback and watch Deegan just rip through the field.
Yeah, that was quite impressive. I was kind of thinking, like, I actually talked to Seth a little bit on track walk, and I was like, dude, we're back on Supercross, man. Like, you're my dark horse this weekend. Like, I have a feeling it's going to be a good weekend for you. And he's like, dude, like, I'm feeling the same way, dude. Like, I just didn't have, like, wasn't comfortable in outdoors. And, not that he wasn't comfortable. He just didn't have, like, the same flow he had during Supercross. And I was like, dude, just go out there, man. And, I think you should feel good about this. I think it's more Supercrossy, a little more technical. I think he's a technical kind of rider. It was impressive to see Seth get that big of a gap. But then, dude, just the way that Deegan was able to drop hammer and absolutely let that thing eat for about 5 minutes and reel him in, was unbelievable. I mean, I was very, very impressed with how well he rode, knowing that Seth isn't ahead of him in championship points, or isn't necessarily the closest guy in championship points, and to have the determination, even with Seth jumping on that red cross flag. I mean, heck, I think Deegan probably still ran a faster lap than him singling that double, which is crazy to me. So yeah, no, it was super, super impressive. It was one of those things where that's a championship kind of ride, and he's obviously proven that he's the best guy in the class. I really wish Joe wouldn't have gone down, because I think Joe in that situation is able to hold off Deegan, and just has a little bit more pace than Hammaker did in the long run. But Seth Hammaker still rode a great race. But I don't know if anybody was stopping Deegan, to be honest, because that man was on a mission. He got it done. So congrats to him. Really, really good ride. You can't really say much else about that other than wow. So I was very impressed with the 38/1 this weekend.
Very impressive performance, and it seemed like the crowd were really willing him on. Of course, he's a very polarizing figure, but there are quite a lot of Deegan 38 merch in the crowd. There are so many Deegan fans out there, and that crowd was starting to come alive. You could see him reeling Seth in, and the crowd just started getting louder and louder, and it was a pretty big roar when he made the move for the win. Of course, Deegan family has spent some time in North Carolina. Haley, during her NASCAR career, of course, was based out of the Tar Heel state. So I'm sure a very popular win, and I agree with your Joe take as well. Joe was one of the few guys who was really able to make up a ton of ground and gain a few positions, make a bunch of passes. It was a very impressive comeback for him. It would have been awesome to see him stay up and see if he would have been able to get around Seth, maybe pull away from him, and then what Deegan could have done there. But if is the biggest little word in the English language. We'll never know for sure. And before we get to the 450 class, the PC curse strikes again. And not only was it just one rider, it struck 3 riders at once, because said red cross flag that Seth Hammaker and Levi Kitchen were penalized for was brought out by their teammate, Garrett Marchbanks. Unfortunately, going down, I didn't see the crash until the replay of the race was shown, but he goes down really hard, crawls off to the side of the track. I saw Garrett when I was stuck in traffic leaving the track, and I saw him on crutches. His right ankle was wrapped up a little bit. There's still, as of now, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. about 1:30 p.m. We still don't have an announcement yet on Garrett's status for the rest of the playoffs, but obviously a hard hit. Hopefully, it's a very minor thing and he's able to line up in St. Louis and in Las Vegas, but not a great start to the playoffs after such a good summer for Garrett. Now in the 450 class, the 250 race was pretty eventful. The 450 race was anything but, because it was basically slot car racing out there. You started it off and it looked like it had the potential to be really good. You had Jet Lawrence first, then Eli Tomac, Chase Sexton, Ken Roxon right there together, and they stayed pretty close for most of the race, but Jet held station in first. Tomac held his gap over Sexton. Nothing was really changing. Tomac ended up going down late, lost the front end on the first corner. Sexton got around him. Hunter Lawrence moved up to fourth and was right there behind Tomac, but couldn't get around him. RJ Hampshire made a move late to get in fifth position ahead of Roxon. The only guy that was really able to gain ground was Justin Cooper, and that was basically by necessity because he came in with a red plate, a nice-looking O'Neill set of gear, red and black. He was primed and ready to go and prove that he had what it took to compete for this playoff championship. And then he goes down and gets stuck under his bike, loses a ton of ground, was way off of the pack, and had to ride through the field. He got up to 11th. He started to reel in Barsha, but the checkered flag flew. Overall, I mean, the 450 race was just there. It was a very boring race, like I mentioned. Not a lot of passing anywhere through the field. Pretty much everybody who got into a position at the start of the race held station there, apart from, like I mentioned, Justin Cooper working his way from the pack. But everybody up front, everybody mid-pack, everybody in the back was pretty much there throughout. And what's new? Another Jet Lawrence victory.
Yeah, I mean, Jet winning. I mean, who's surprised, right? Nobody. It's become pretty known for him to be winning these races and to be on the top step of the podium. And I think the race itself, it just kind of was like a weird day, right? Like, I mean, the 250 race was good, but like the weather started to turn and the wind started howling, and these jumps are big, man. The wind does affect some stuff, and I mean, it was interesting to say the least. I definitely would say it's Chase is like, I don't even know if he's in second in points yet, but Chase now has to win St. Louis and has to win Vegas for a chance. If he wins St. Louis, it gives him a chance at Vegas, right? Like that's kind of what you want it to come down to is the last race of the year, who's the best guy, whatever. That's kind of how we all want it to go, just so we can kind of get like a heads up race or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean the 450 class, I didn't really get to watch much of the race. I watched some of the highlights. I think the LCQ is probably way more entertaining than the motos itself. I wish those were broadcasted on the live air. It was like you said, bare. Not much to say about the 450 class. It seemed pretty. The track itself, like I know we're going to talk about it more later, but the track just didn't kind of give opportunities for passing very well, and it made it tough to do much. And I have my opinions on the track, and I'll get into that later. But like you said, very bare. I think St. Louis will bring more. I think St. Louis will have more of a supercross style feel to the track. I think the added sand. I think sand is always a great. If they do it right, it's always a great obstacle. I think it provides different lines and provides the ability to pass more. I think sand's a great addition to Supercross and the Super Motocross Championship. And I think that this track in St. Louis will be probably the best playoff round we have seen, in my opinion, from the last 2 3 years.
I agree that the LCQ is definitely better than the 450 Moto. You had that 5 through 9 range. It was really just battling the entire race. You had Dean Wilson fighting his way into the transfer spots, Chiz just murdering Marshall Welton for no reason. I mean, it was a very entertaining race. Of course, I'm a huge LCQ fan. I always love watching what people will do to try to get into the main events or the motos in this case. And you mentioned something that I had outlined as my next topic. Of course, the weather is a big talking point from this weekend. Yeah, it was starting to get a little nasty out there as the 450 Moto was ending. I saw these clouds rolling in, and I texted one of my friends. I'm like, I'm not going to be surprised if we're under a weather delay here soon. There was a severe thunderstorm warning in the county. The clouds started getting darker and darker, and there was a really large black cloud that started rolling in. The wind started picking up big time. I mean, tough blocks were blowing off of their normal position, off the sides of jumps or the sides of corners. Banners were starting to flip up and try to become airborne. There was dust flying around all over the track. And then by the time that Jet Lawrence rode over to the podium and you had the other guys go up, Chase and Eli, the rain started pouring and coming down. And it's like, well, we're going to have a little bit of muddy races. And then the first lightning strike. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And of course, there was more lightning strikes. And I still feel like most people don't know the typical guidelines. And if our sport is like other sports, it's if lightning is within an 8-mile radius or something like that of the track, it is a 30-minute wait until you can resume activity for the safety of the fans. And I know people are like, oh, we used to race in storms back in the day. We used to race in lightning. As if there wasn't an incident where lightning killed a NASCAR fan several years back at a race in Pocono. As if there hasn't been other injuries. There have been racers struck by lightning in the past in certain amateur races or whatever. But it's a 30-minute wait, and then every lightning strike resets the clock. Conceivably, you could be down to 30 seconds left or 15 seconds left and getting ready to go, and then all of a sudden another lightning strike in the area completely resets the clock. For the people saying they didn't see lightning through the entire delay, I didn't see it through the entire delay, but I saw it several times, especially towards the end of the delay. Everybody was like, oh, we should be good to go now. What's the holdup? I saw lightning off in the distance. And like I said, it's 8 miles. So you can't really tell where the lightning is striking, but you could definitely see flashes in the clouds, flashes far off in the distance. And the rain was pouring down pretty heavily at some points in time. I know they had the camera crew out at some of the trucks. You could see the water just gushing under some of the trailers. Some of the riders came out onto the track from the 250 class. They were in umbrellas. It felt like, hey, we might get this thing ready to go. And then once again, more lightning, more rain. I do feel bad for the fans, especially the ones who paid money to be there and were like, yeah, we get to see 5 races today. They only got to see 2 races. I know they got to see practice, qualifying. I know they could have been out in the Fan Fest and got to see the LCQs maybe, but it sucks for those people because, once again, you go to racing for the race. All the other stuff is cool. It is awesome to walk around the pits. It's great to catch qualifying and to see who's fast and to see what the track looks like. But at the end of the day, 99% of the fans in those grandstands are there to see the racing action, and only 40% of the races were run before the race was canceled. But at the end of the day, you look at the logistics involved. I think I overheard somebody saying that ZMAX Dragway hosts a drag racing event in a couple weeks, and obviously that's a lot of dirt and a lot of material to haul out of that track, and you need it to be spotless if it's an NHRA event and you have 300-mile-an-hour absolute beasts of machines rolling down that track. You need conditions to be perfect. And you have, of course, you think about the riders and the teams. It's usually only a one-day show on Saturday. They probably don't have the hotel rooms for another night. They probably have their flights already booked for Sunday or for late Saturday evening. It's an unenviable position to be in the shoes of those working for Feld, working for MX Sports, because they want to get the racing in. They want the fans to get what they paid for, but at the same time, you have to keep the fans safe. You have to keep the machine ready and rolling and ready to go for St. Louis, and you can't really throw off the schedule of the sport. But it's a strange weekend. Hopefully we don't have to deal with anything like this again. Like I said, I feel bad for the fans. Hopefully hopefully all of them will come back to the races. I'm sure some of them might not, and that is completely understandable. But I also want to hear your view from the pits and see. I know the storm was pretty bad, but you guys, it was a little bit smaller setup of a week for the weekend for you guys, of course, just gauge riding for you. So no semi-truck, just the van, but you had the easy ups there. What was it like in the pits with the weather situation, trying to hold things together? How much water was there? And what was the view like and the vibe like waiting around and trying to determine and figure out whether you were going to go racing again or whether you had to pack up and hit the road for St. Louis?
Well, it was kind of funny. I mean, as the first rainfall came down, we went out and looked at the track after, we if you look back for us, Foxborough Mud Race, great weekend for us. We ain't afraid of the mud, let's just say that. But at the same time, we're trying to get to all these races, and we only have, we're limited on parts and whatnot. So we've only got the one bike that once we leave Charlotte, it's going to be on the road for quite some time. We had another bike there, but it was Gage's practice bike, and he's taking that back with him so he can ride this weekend or this week. Yeah, so it was interesting. It was definitely something where I've never experienced rain delay, I guess, before. Foxborough was raining, but we just kind of knew we were going to race no matter what, and the motos got shortened. But after that second rainfall, we were kind of all like, once we had gone up to the line, they're like, "Oh, yep, got to go back to your pit another 30 minutes." That second rainfall that came in was just heavy, and it started flooding stuff, and we were like, man, I don't know if we should race, man. Like it's getting to that point where like the bike, we need to make sure we can keep the bike safe, whatever. And we don't really have that much mud stuff, so I'm asking around for filter covers and some foam and and stuff like that, just to prep the bike a little bit more. So started doing that, and then sure enough, as I'm riding around trying to get more stuff or figure some more things out, get told the race is off. And like I got told multiple different things, like they can't drop the gate after 7:30, which this is where, from like a Feld point of view, like if we race in the stadium, we have the stadium lights, the track is very well lit, no shadows, nothing like that. Vegas, we obviously race tonight, they bring in lights. Daytona, they bring in lights. Why do we not have lights in case of a situation like we just had, so we can wait these weather storms out and still race no matter what, and give the fans two motos and give the riders two motos for like an opportunity? Because like a mud race could throw a serious wrench into these playoffs. Like you saw how it was for Tom Vial. I got 22nd. What if Deegan's bike blows up or whatever? Like there's just so many different things that you could think of. Am I glad we didn't race? Honestly, yes. I don't know if that track could have held up like the way you would have wanted it to. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm glad it was just interesting situation. All I can say is it was weird waiting around, and then I didn't even hear from anybody from like the AMA or Feld saying like, yeah, we're not racing. So I just got told by another team manager like, yeah, we're not racing. So packed up and hit the road.
That was one of the big issues as well. You talk about the lighting, even the lights that were over top of the grandstands. I don't feel like they would have covered the track at any level. And of course, you had that back section, the more outdoor section. There was just nothing back there. And you mentioned, of course, you bring in lights for Daytona and you bring in lights from Vegas. So why couldn't you have those? And I heard somebody else mention in the press box, I don't remember who it was, but somebody up there, I could hear them saying, they're like, why didn't we start the race at 1 p.m.? Why don't we have a 1 p.m. start time for Charlotte? Because if that would have happened, it was 5 o'clock when that storm rolled in, and you would have been basically wrapping up. Maybe still doing podium interviews. Maybe it was the last lap or two of the final race, but everything would have been done. The media people may have had to wait things out for a press conference. Of course, ultimately it got canceled at the end of the day. But a 3 p.m. start time, that if Charlotte comes back on the SMX schedule, I feel like that's going to be changed and updated for next year. I know it was a hot and humid afternoon, but at the same time, something like this happens, and the fans are upset because they didn't get to see all the racing. The teams are like, wait, what are we doing? Everybody in the press box is like, what are we doing? What's happening? Is it going to be canceled? Are we going to get to run? It was definitely an unfortunate set of circumstances for everybody involved. Honestly, the vibes in the pits, and this is something I've talked about with multiple people, they felt slightly off to me this weekend. It wasn't like it was a bad feeling. It wasn't like there was some kind of black cloud just hovering over. It's just, it seems like everybody's just like, okay, it's another race. A lot of people were tired. I mean, you think about all of the riders, all of the mechanics, the other team personnel, media guys, photographers, videographers, I mean, race officials. This is race 29. Been going since early January, and the grind keeps going. Only 1 week off between races. Obviously, Jack, you've been in most of the races. You can probably speak to the grind and how it is, but it seems like everybody is just tired. And while there is a bunch of money on the line, while there is a bunch of bragging rights and a potential for greatness on the line, there's just been so much work, so much travel, so much preparation and training that it seems like everybody is just kind of tired and ready for a break. Even though there's really no breaks in the sport, you think about guys running motocross and nations. They get a week between the playoffs and nations to prepare. What about the guys running World Supercross during the off season? I mean, it seems like there's definitely no rest for the weary in the sport, but did you feel like that as well, Jack, that things were a little bit off and some people were kind of like, yeah, let's just get through these next 3 weeks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been a long year. I mean, you look at like the West Coast teams. I mean, for me, my season kind of starts in February. First East Coast round, I get a little extra break. Supercross, you get some more breaks. We didn't do all the outdoors. We did 7 of them, and then now we're doing still 20 some weekends we're doing racing. And yeah, no, it's definitely like when you're on a big factory team and you work for these guys every weekend, and you're a 450 guy and you're racing 35 weekends or 34 weekends, like it's a lot. It's straight up a lot. Like it can get tiring traveling every weekend. You're gone Thursday through Sunday. It's you get maybe a total of 4 weekends off in between the 33 weekends, 34 weekends, whatever it is. It's just a lot. And I mean, as a mechanic, a guy who's, if you're building on Sunday, building on Thursday, you're even done longer than the riders are. It definitely is drowsy. And for the teams, it's not, the SMX stuff is more for the rider than it is for the team, like, in my opinion. I mean, it's for like a team like us, it's good, right? Like, we have our guys in getting, more TV time. We can say we made the playoffs. We can say we're a playoff team. It includes SMX, that kind of thing. It's good for us. Like, it's good for publicity. It's like, it kind of reminds me of like our first season as a team. Like, we're just trying to get our foot in the door, race all this, be at all the races for Supercross and whatnot. And then, obviously doing outdoors. We didn't really know what to expect, but still, like, the season's been really, really long. And I'm even experiencing some, oh man, like, we still got to do another 2 weekends of this. Like, it's not bad, it's not great, but at the end of the day, it's a sport we love, and if we can put $10,000 in one of my riders' pockets, I'd be stoked. And I think that's kind of how everybody thinks of it. But the energy level and the excitement is definitely not as big as like when you're first coming back to Supercross or first doing the outdoors. So it definitely is interesting to see how everybody reacts to the situation. But at the end of the day, it's just another race.
One last topic to cover before we get into predictions and stuff for episode 12. But it seemed like the Charlotte SMX track was really tricky. A lot of riders were definitely talking about the difficulty, talking about how challenging it was to compete, and a lot of guys ended up going down throughout the weekend. The big rhythm section on the right side of the drag strip claimed so many victims. Julian Beaumer, a burst fracture in one of his vertebrae. Hopefully he heals up soon. Christopher Harris from SMX Next went down really hard. Landon Gibson went down hard. Ryder Malinowski. Plus, you have other incidents like you look at Garrett Marchbanks, which was on a separate section of the track, but he went down hard. It seemed like the track, and obviously I mentioned this at Bud's Creek as well, there was a lot of guys that seemed like going down, but it seems like the track was claiming a lot of victims on Saturday, and there was just a ton of carnage, and especially that big rhythm lane for those SMX Next guys. I mean, they're still learning the sport, obviously very talented guys, but you have such a massive rhythm lane that you have to nail absolutely perfect. and they're still developing, still growing their skill set. And a lot of those guys casing rhythms or going down, it just seemed like a very treacherous track. And I know a lot of guys were probably happy and stoked. You mentioned the track conditions as well with the rain. If we would have raced in the rain after the first rain, I don't think it would have been too bad. The soil would have been very saturated, a little sticky, a little muddy, but nothing major. But that second heavy rain hit, you could see soil being washed away from the bases of jumps. The sand corner, there were puddles forming in the sand corner. I mean, it was definitely changing around very fast. But from your perspective and being involved with the team and stuff, what were your guys' thoughts in terms of the track? Obviously, we want a track to challenge the skill sets of the racers involved. These are the best racers on the planet. It's the playoffs. But at the same time, it seems like there was a lot of chaos and a lot of guys who ended up hitting the ground really hard because of the unforgiving nature of that ZMAX Dragway track.
Yeah, I mean the track was by far, from what I've heard from riders and stuff like that, and even watching it, was probably the sketchiest track I've ever seen. I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the drag strip tracks. I think I don't know. I just don't really like the way that they have to do things. They have to go over the concrete barriers itself being there. It's just not something I like watching as a fan. I like seeing the guys ride. The tracks are super cookie cutter, and they have to do, and to make them interesting, they have to take some risk, and that's what they did. They, like those doubles that were in the back section, jumping over the concrete barriers. All those doubles were super sketchy and super hard. And like when you see guys in a 450 seat bouncing a 50-foot double because there's no room for them to have run up, it's not good. Like it's not a good sign. So I don't know. It was weird. I think the track could have been better. I get where they're coming from, and they're trying to make it better for racing. I thought the rhythm section idea was really good, but with the way the soil played out and the way that there was like rain Thursday, so it kind of messed the track up, and it was super wet and muddy. Like when we were on track walk and stuff like that, like it just didn't. And like that, and like the way I almost look at it, it's like that water has nowhere to go after it goes through the dirt, so it like just sits there. Like it goes on a concrete, which like I guess it's Supercross, it's plywood, but at the end of the day, it's like the plywood probably soaks it up a little bit, like a little bit more than the concrete would, right? The asphalt. But I don't know. It wasn't a very good track. I think they could have done some more to prep it better um, after some practices and stuff like that, just to make it a little bit more safer. But those guys had to take risks to try to go fast, and unfortunately, it bit some of those guys in the butt. That's just kind of how Supercross is, to be honest. And it sucks, but it's a sport, and hopefully they'll learn from their mistakes last year. And I honestly hope they move away from the drag strip tracks. I think there's better options out there for building a track. I think if we could go to speedways, it'd be 10 times better.
Moving on now, briefly going to recap the MXGP of Turkey, and it was the Bullet back on top for the second race in a row. 2-1-1 his last three races overall. Jeffrey Hurlings is performing well. What could be the last few races for him aboard a KTM, strange to say, but Hurlings goes 2-1 in Turkey. Fellow KTM rider Lucas Kunin with a 1-3, Roman Fevra a 3-2 to round out the podium, then Geiser, Fernandez, Renault running down the rest of the order. MX2 class was back and forth between the two title combatants. Langenfelder 3-1 for the overall victory. De Wolf 2-2 for second. Sasha Kunin rounding out the podium. Guillaume Ferez's really strong ride in the second moto. Fourth overall with 6-3 scores. Despite finishing 1 point behind him in the overall scores, Kai De Wolf did gain a couple points this weekend thanks to his performance in the qualifying race. I believe he was second, and I think Langenfelder was fifth, so a few points there. Heading into Shanghai this weekend, Fevra still looking good, a 36-point lead, pretty much just managing the gap now for the Frenchman. And then when you look at the MX2 standings, only 12 points separating Langenfelder and DeWolf. This could go down to the wire, and I thought an interesting thing I heard from some bench racing in the press box, I heard Lewis Phillips mention, he basically straight up said that from the vibes he gets in the MXGP paddock, he feels that no one really has faith in Langenfelder to hold out this championship and to keep that points lead. Obviously, DeWolf, the defending champion, definitely one of the hottest prospects in moto. He's probably one of the top 250 riders in the world, him and Hayden Deegan. It should be very interesting. Of course, another flyaway race, another man-made temporary track, whatever you want to call it, this weekend in China, in Shanghai. And let's go ahead and get right into the predictions. I'm going to go quick with my Shanghai podium predictions. I'm going to have on my MX2 podium, I have DeWolf winning, Langenfelder second, and then Andrea Adamo rebounding to take third overall. Then the MXGP class, I'm gonna stick with Hurlings here. I did pick him in Arnhem because of the Netherlands, because of the sand. It was his home race. He's always great in sandy conditions. I did not have him having such a great performance in Turkey, but the ball is rolling. Hurlings has the momentum. Obviously, he missed several rounds. He's nowhere close to the championship fight. But for bragging rights and to end his KTM tenure with a bang, I'm going to go Hurlings to win his third straight overall. I'm going to be a little unpredictable this weekend on my 450 podium. I don't think Koonin or Fevre finish on the podium this week. I have Tim Geiser in second place. And then how about Maxime Renault in third? Yamaha's got a few podiums with Vlanderen. Renault was about fifth or sixth this weekend. He's due for a podium. He's due for really good results. And of course, Motocross of Nations is coming up, and Renault seems to always excel and always perform very well during that race. And a podium at Shanghai could help him get into form for that weekend. So my podiums, as I mentioned, DeWolf, Langenfelder, Adamo, and then in the MXGP class, no championship favorites in the top three. I'm going Hurlings, Geiser, Renault. Jack, give me your MXGP predictions for the podium this weekend in China.
So with it being kind of like it's a flyaway race, all that kind of thing, I think Renault does really, really well. Like you were saying, he gets back on the podium. I'm going to have him actually winning this weekend. I think Renault getting ready for MX Nation. For some reason, he's like on a different level when it comes to MX Nation. So I think he'll be excited about that, and I think he'll be pushing himself to be better in that kind of situation. So I see him winning this weekend. I have Jeffrey Hurlings in second. I have Roman Febra in third. In the 250 class, I have Langenfelder winning. I have Kai de Wolf in second. And then I have Guillaume Ferrez in third. I think I put Guillaume on the podium last weekend. He was really close. He got fourth overall last weekend. But I think with these flyaway rounds, I think Guillaume, being that he's probably ridden more random tracks than anybody in that class, being that he raced over here in America and can perform well on the random tracks and not knowing certain things and whatever, I think he is going to be really good. I think he'll be a third place guy this weekend. At least I'm hoping he will be. And that's my MXGP predictions for this weekend.
The Renault pick for the win is spicy, but I did look back through the results. I thought he was up front earlier this year, and he actually started the year off with a win in the MXGP of Argentina. So it would be really cool for Renault to get back some momentum at the end of the year as well. We'll see how that goes this weekend. Now shifting gears to the St. Louis SMX, the dome at America's Center, the former house that the Rams built, whose house? Super Motocross's house this weekend. I'll go 250 predictions first. I hinted at it last week that I felt this round was really going to be the wild card for the playoffs, especially in the 250 class. So without further ado, I am going to do what you did last weekend. I'm going to have Seth Hamaker first overall. Of course, a great Supercross season. And he talked a little bit about on press day about how he was stoked with his Supercross riding. He felt very good, felt confident. He led so many laps at Charlotte, that has to give him a big confidence boost as well. And after coming so close, he's going to get the job done in St. Louis. Seth Hammaker for the win. I'm going to continue with the chaos. We're going to have an interesting round this weekend, I think. I'm going Cole Davies for second, and I'm going Tom Vial for third. No Deegan on the podium, no Shimoda on the podium. Hammaker, Tom, of course. Tom had a great season indoors, very consistent apart from that mud race in Foxborough where he crashed and got stuck. Tom is kind of funny when you have a two-time MX2 world champion, a motocross expert comes over to America, and he has his most success in a discipline he'd never really competed in before. A strange irony of Vial's tenure here in America. But I think Vial will be back on the podium this weekend, and with a supercross track, with a victory in that moto at Budds Creek, a solid ride. I think he went down and lost a couple spots late in Charlotte, but Cole Davies was obviously insanely good in his rookie year in Supercross, perhaps the best 250 rookie we've seen in a long time, several years. I think the podium's going to change. I don't think Deegan and Shimoda are too far back, but I feel like the switch back to indoors, those guys have been outdoors. Deegan, of course, is in a different league outdoors and fitness-wise, but Supercross-wise, you have a bunch of guys who are hungry for good results. Seth after his near win. Cole Davies, of course, has had a fantastic year. Tom Vial looking to go out with a bang before he potentially heads back to Europe. I'm going a little out of the box for this week's 250 predictions. Who do you have in the 250 class, Jack?
Well, I'm going to go bold, too. I think I'm going to go Levi Kitchen winning this race. I think Levi Kitchen, you look at 2023, Levi Kitchen Triple Crown race, goes out and goes 1-1-1, my friend Trey. Levi Kitchen's getting the win this weekend, 100% on that one. Kitchen looked good at Charlotte. He looked comfy. He looked like he was kind of getting back in the flow of things. I got Shimoda getting second, and then I do have Deegan on the podium as well. It's hard to leave him off the podium. I'm surprised you left Joe and Deegan off the podium, but I'm going to go Kitchen, Shimoda, Deegan. I think Deegan has a good moto, but then has a moto where he does struggle. And I see him out being the third place overall rider. I'm going to go right into the 450s, if you don't mind, Trey.
Go for it.
I got Chase Sexton this week. I think he's back home, kind of by Illinois. He has some friends and family there. It's more supercrossy. I think he's been training on that a lot. And I think Sexton feels the flow again in that SX and gets the W at St. Louis. You can't really put Jet too far behind him, though, so I'm going to have Jet second. And then I'm going to go Tomac third. I think Tomac will be good. I think Tomac actually might sneak a moto win this weekend. But I do have – because that was – I think Tomac won in 2023 there as well. So, yeah, I got Sexton, Jet Lawrence, Eli Tomac for my 450 podium. How about you, Trey?
I agree with your winner. I think every single 450 race we've predicted since we started the Stire Sound, I've picked Jet Lawrence. It's the safe pick. It's the easy pick. He's very inevitable. I like to say death, taxes, Jet Lawrence winning. It seems pretty certain, but I'm going to agree. I think Chase Sexton gets the job done in St. Louis. It is like a home race for him. You said that. He is from Illinois. It is pretty close to home. He's got to be stoked about that opportunity. And I think Chase gets the win. I agree also with Jet being in second. You can't leave him too far off of things. And I do have a Star Yamaha rider in third, but it's not Eli Tomac. Supercross style. You can't bet against Cooper Webb. And I'm technically betting against him because I don't have him for the win. But I think Cooper Webb is finally going to get a podium in the playoffs. Obviously, he's been a 5 to 8 guy throughout the playoffs in the first 2 to 3 years of this format, but a very supercross style track in St. Louis. If it is so technical, usually dome tracks are a little tighter than some of the others, depending on the format. Obviously, we have an outside section, but if we're going to have some supercrossy stuff, and I don't think there are any whoops either, I think Cooper Webb could be a player this weekend and really mix things up. You can't pick against or bet against a 3-time Supercross champion and perhaps the guy with the most racecraft indoors. So I have Cooper Webb rounding out my podium. And then to conclude the episode, random spot prediction. Our random spot this week is 7th. So we get a top 10 finisher not one of the guys contending for a podium, but a 7th place run would be a solid result for several guys. I'm going to go 250 class first. Jordan Smith is my pick for 7th. He could definitely surprise people, and I think he could be a dark horse for a podium. But at the same time, there are so many people. I mean, I left Shimoda and Deegan off my podium. Levi Kitchen's not on my podium. Plus, you think of other guys who could be mixing things up. But I feel like 7th place could be a very Jordan Smith spot. I need to step up my game for these random predictions, so hopefully it's a nice, smooth weekend for Jordan Smith, and he keeps it in 7th place. And then for Supercross, or the 450 class, I mean, it is more Supercross this weekend. 450 class, I'm going to go with RJ Hampshire in 7th place. I have the Rockstar Husky in 7th. I feel like when you have Jet, Chase, Eli, Cooper, Kenny, Hunter, it's probably going to be like Justin Cooper, RJ, Barsha, guys like that contending around that range. Ferrandis. I'm going to go RJ for 7th. My picks, Jordan Smith and RJ Hampshire for our random spot, which is 7th this weekend. Who have you got? I want to give props because holy crap, dude. You nailed both of them in Charlotte. We had 19th place. You said, is it wrong to pick my guy Gage? You went with Gage Linville. He got 19th in the 250 moto. Then the 450 class, you were kind of waffling. You wasn't sure. I was kind of waffling too. But you were like, you know what? I'm going Harry Kulis. And guess who gets 19th in the 450 moto? From Tallinn, Estonia. Harry Kulis on the MRP SBR Husqvarna. So I have a Triumph and a Husky claiming 7th this weekend. Are you going to go back-to-back with the perfect random predictions? Who you got?
I go Barsha 450 class. I think he'll be solid. I think he'll be. It's kind of like where he's been all year. Right? 7th is honestly almost harder than picking 3rd place in the 450 class because there's so many guys that like I think could get 7th. There's like a guy that's probably could finish in 14th that could get 7th in the 450 class. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go Justin Barsha this weekend. In the 450 class, 250s. Man, that's also tough too, man. There's so many good dudes. I'm gonna go Nate Thrasher in the 250 class. I think he being back on Supercross, he'll be good. I think he'll be solid. Like I think he'll get a good start, but I think he'll get swallowed up and then shuffle his way back to 7th place this weekend.
Yeah, there's so many variables. There's so many guys. All the guys I've just mentioned, plus 450 class, you have a very good point. Like, somebody could finish 7th. They could also finish 14th. You look at Joey Savacci. Look at Justin Hill. Some of these guys could put on a really good showing and finish inside the top 10. They could also be 14th, 15th, depending on how things play off. 250 class. Thrasher, of course, usually a better indoor rider, although he's had pretty good success on speedway tracks before. But supercross wise, Nate Thrasher usually gets a win or two every year, usually very competitive. But it's so hard in this field of 250 guys with Deegan and Shimoda, and then on back, Kitchen, Hammaker, Vial, Davies, Smith. If he's healthy, Marchbanks, all these guys. So much talent to pick from. I mean, Maximus Voland had a podium in Supercross. You could throw him in as a wild card. Ryder D had a few good races before he got hurt earlier in the year, and he looked pretty good in Charlotte. What if somebody like Drew Adams has a breakout ride or something? So hard to predict, but that's what makes it fun, and that's what makes it so satisfying if you nail those picks. And dude, you felt like $1,000,000. I could tell yesterday when I told you. I was like, dude, you got both of your predictions. But this has been episode number 12 of the Stire Sound, recapping the wild, wacky, wet, whatever other W word you want to describe the Charlotte SMX. A strange event, only one moto that counted for the overalls. But we're rolling into a dome this weekend. I don't think we're going to have much weather threats this weekend. Hopefully not, at least in the dome at St. Louis. Should be a fun one. 2 MXGP rounds to go, 2 playoff rounds to go. Jack, any last thoughts before we conclude today?
No, sir. I will see you guys in St. Louis.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Jack, safe travels to you and to the DBD crew as you guys head out to the gateway to the west. This has been episode number 12 of the Stire Sound. For Jack Noel, I am Trey Stire. Thank you so much for listening and supporting our show. The Stire Sound is fading out.
Ryan punting it away. Austin back deep. And the punt taken on the far side by Stedman Bailey. Bailey down the sideline, and he will take it all the way. The Seahawks were faked out by Austin. He set up for the return on the left side. The kick went to the right, and it's Bailey who takes it back 86 yards for a Rams touchdown.
That looks like something you see on the internet, Darryl, with all these trick plays.